CA tool for that matter. So it's also interesting to know that if testing team is also involved in these CA activities, it becomes much more easier for you to interface all your automation tools right before the build is given out to you. So you can perform all your testing right at the build stage where developers are checking in, automatically the build is triggered and it would be performing all your UI test, not the unit level test but the UI test, right? So this would be the emulator based test which when integrated with Jenkins, which normally runs. So this has been a setup where Jenkins has been integrated with Robotium and you will be able to run all our UI tests here. So this has been one of the application of using Jenkins. Now coming to the test automation triangle, what normally happens, the major drawback that what we have in our organizations are, we go for the this triangle, the flipped one. So what happens is, this is the unit level test, this is the integration test, and this is the GUI level test. So we emphasize a lot of automation on this GUI and rather reduce on this unit level test, because normally developers, they have to write the code and also it's difficult for them, probably because of timelines or various other reasons, for them not to go for unit level test. So this has been the scenario in most of the organization, and this has been a paper from Patrick Wilson, an authority, where he said that if you're going to flip this triangle, have maximum number of unit tests which are going to cover, and then if the triangle is going to be inclining towards above this, you will be having manual tests. Probably if you had attended Anand Bagmar's session yesterday, probably you would have come to know that we perform a small amount of testing here. So that would be the flip triangle where we want to perform our testing. So the challenges here really are reusability of the code. So organizations are going in a rapid pace where they are developing apps for both Android market, iOS market and Windows market as well. So we want our framework to support all of these at the same point of time by using very minimal code change. So that is what we are looking at. So reusability of the same code is of prime importance, and if there is any hybrid solution that we can build onto it, that is what is emphasized. So looking at what the solution could be, we have the object repository. The object repository could be in terms of GUI map, or it could be in terms of XPath, the name, ID and so on. For example, people who are comfortable with Selenium, you would notice that if there is a web page, if you go and inspect the element, for those of you who are new, just go and inspect the element, you will see the HTML page rendered out of it, and you would find various things like ID, name, XPath and so on. So these could be various parameters which could go into this object repository. So is there any way for us to make the object repository common against all the platforms? So one of the solutions which could be is like, for example, you have your app running, you have your web running, and you have your web on your smaller devices like your smartphones running. So the common thing again across all of these would be the XPath, or it could be the IDs and the names, which you can enforce, especially the ID and name part, you can enforce with your developers, saying that please provide me a common name or common ID across all of these platforms, so that it's easy for me to automate it. So if you are going to follow this particular specification, then your object repository is going to be common across all the platforms. So your iOS app is also going to have the same name as your Android app, as your web application, which means that you have got your object repository. Then you can build your system specific libraries on the automation tools. So if you are using Selenium, you can build your Selenium library, whatever it intends to do, and you can build your Securely library and your APM library, and you can have any sort of automation interface, the unit testing framework which you have been using. And one of the good tool is TestNG, which is much better than JUnit, but if you are comfortable with JUnit, even that holds valid. So probably you can explore TestNG since it supports most of these open source tools. And probably what you should be doing is have a small configuration file. So what this configuration file is going to do is, it's going to see which platform you are going to run this application on. For example, it can be a Windows phone or it can be a iOS phone. Depending on the application which it detects at runtime, it will direct the test cases to the specific libraries. So here, even your all the Selenium library, security library, they are going to have the same set of functions. And since we have built an object repository which is common against all the platforms, it's easy for us to go and reuse most of the code which are built here. And we make use of this runner whereby we have the configuration given to us. At runtime we can detect, or probably we can input what should be the platform in which it should run. So it's easy for us to go and run on these many devices. And of course you can build your domain specific library over it, and you can also have your BDD test above it. So this would emphasize that we have covered most of the scenarios which are currently there in the organization. In addition, we also have seen that this part, the library part, we can make use of the reusable code at various points. So this solution, what it brings in indirectly is, we have a test automation engineer, we need some framework which we discussed in the previous slide. So what we are going to do is, this framework is going to support us with all the domain specific library common across all the platforms. So the job of this test engineer is going to be where he fills the object repository. So this object repository would be very specific to what app it caters, whether it's a web app or a native app. He can go and take out those specific objects from it, and he can create his own object library. So that would be a test automation engineer's work, whereby he can write the function library later. So we have our framework which is common across all, and then we have very specific libraries here. Where we have the framework here, we have the object repository and the platforms. So the tester or the automation engineer will be writing the test cases and the test data required, and we can run it on a SUT. So this would be the normal solution, which when we look at the overall picture, we have the framework running. So there would be a executor. This executor can be a manual executor, or it can be an automated executor which automatically triggers. For example, if it's a CI build, continuous integration build, it normally automatically triggers at a specified frequency. So it will execute all your test scripts on any of these platforms which is underlying it. It can be Calabash, CKD, Selenium, APM and so on. Depending on the platforms that you are giving at runtime, it can run on any of these devices which are connected. And these devices can be physical device which you're going to connect to your laptops or your PCs, or it could be even your emulators which is going to run. And for those of you who are probably using emulators for even web application, one possible quick solution probably you might be knowing, there are UI spoofers. So user agents which you get for most of the browsers. So probably you can explore the user agents. It almost mimics how your phone or device would mean. I'll just show you just for your understanding. For example, we have the browser here, and this is the spoofer. So depending on by default we have the Chrome application, but apart from Chrome we also can have Internet Explorer, or you can go with iOS, Android, Windows Phone and so on. So this would give us a mimic. So it's available for free from Chrome store. Just you can go and try it out. So in case you are using emulator, this is much better option than using an emulator. So we have seen till here. Now when we are going to integrate this, the sample code can look something like this. We have built the tool specific libraries. Here it could be Genie library or Security library, APM library and so on. And then I can have my classes which can call out the functions from these libraries, and then I can use it seamlessly. So I can call security library at the same time as Selenium library, and it can interface. Since I have a runner, which is going to interface my test cases with each one of these, it's easy for me to go and call any of the libraries which I have already built. So this is going to complement my testing. I am going to retain all my manual testing here, but all these efforts are really going to bring down my cost and efforts which I am spending across the platforms. So the final solution is going to look something like this. I have my single script which I'm writing it only once and not for different platforms at different points of time. So I'm not going to write separately for Selenium, separately for Robotium and so on. Rather, I'm just going to have one script, and based on the runtime, it's going to select, for example, the script could be go and click on Google, on the URL google.com. So if I'm running on a smartphone or on a PC, it detects at runtime and then it goes and calls that specific library and it can run it on at the same point of time. So it's going to be one single script with which the test engineer is going to do. So few aspects that we would need to take care is required stability. So probably you would also want to consider Cucumber into your framework. Look at how easily it is easy for you to seamlessly integrate your story points as well as the business cases given by the business analyst. This could be one of the ways that one of the reasons that you would want to explore BDD. And then have your activity oriented over task oriented, which would mean that if you're going to write your test scripts, don't go and say that for example you're typing google.com, if there is a search bar and you go and click on it, this click should not be recorded in your BDD. Rather, just say that enter google.com and go and navigate to the page. So this navigation can probably happen to the physical keyboard which is there, or it could be the virtual screen which is there. So it can happen over any point of time. So make it as generic as possible so that the solution can work easily, and make it business readable. So one of the options for you to go for BDD solution. So the comprehensive solution is going to look like this, where you have the framework, all the automation tools are here. An easier way of envisaging this is on the development framework. I'll just show you. So I have my Eclipse environment running. So here what I'm doing is, so I open a project. So these would be the JRE libraries. In the reference libraries, it's easy for me to add any of the libraries which I'm going to build. So I have used Selenium library, which is given by the automation tool, and I can use various other things. And in addition to this, I can also make a jar file of my library, which I'm going to use as a runner. This runner is going to be an interface between all the tools. So even that can be included here. And I can also include securely and so on. So it's easily, since everything can be archived into a jar file, I can easily reference it into my build tools. And when I'm going to call it out here, it's easy for me to just call Selenium or APM and so on. So it can easily work with any of these applications. So just to go with APM. This is a sample securely script. Just if you want to explore this, I have only referenced a securely jar file. It's quite handy. So it works across platforms. So between Mac and Windows platform, it quite easily integrates. So here what you see is very much similar to if you have used Selenium. You create an object of the screen. There it would be, for example, Robotium, you create an object of Solo. So here you create either a WebDriver. Similar to WebDriver, you have a screen, and then you can perform any of the actions. And here I'm referring to a logo. So this would be the image comparison which actually happens. So I would need to take a screenshot, and it does a image comparison between each other. So this is one of the way. And in APM, when you look at the source code here, a simple APM test, it looks almost like you'd be using your Selenium, and you would just add your remote drivers instead of web drivers, and you would be giving certain capabilities to it where it needs to run. So the beauty of APM is it can work both between iOS and Android. So it's easy for you to just change the capability where it needs to run, whether it's the iOS or whether in Android. So I can run it easily, giving the version name and whether it's a virtual device or a physical device and so on. So I can go and I can invoke a particular test and I can run it and do all sort of assertions. So let me see if I can run this.